power words that drive conversion. So the secret behind each savvy business owner, copywriter, and designer is that they know how large of an impact language has on emotions and persuading action. So there are certain words and phrases that are proven time and time again to boost response and conversion rates across the board. So in this webinar, we're going to help teach you which power words are the most useful in certain situations and how to use these in the best way for your own business. So we encourage you to take notes and ask questions throughout the webinar. My name is Kristen Paul. I am a client and media strategist here at Potrats. We also have Jose Romero. He is the marketing and communications manager. We have Ali Shivka. She is our senior graphic designer. And then we have Ali Misik. She is our marketing and communications specialist.
Okay, so just to get things started, a lot of you might have seen our Power Words That Drive Conversion PDF that went around and that you probably got upon signing up for the webinar. We gave you 100 power words in 5 different categories. Those categories were urgency, aesthetics, excitement, authority, and exclusivity. So obviously, 100 words, those aren't all the power words that you're ever going to be able to implement in your marketing. I think it's important to recognize that we gave you a starting point, and now we're going to tell you how to implement those strategies. But that's not to say that you should limit yourself to the words we gave you. Again, we gave you a starting point, and now we're going to teach you how you can expand on that and be creative with your marketing and go from there. So to get started, I just want to stress the idea that, again, creativity is going to be really important when you're developing marketing strategies surrounded by power words. A/B testing is something that's really important to do, and I think no matter which area of marketing you're thinking about, whether it's graphic design, whether it's email marketing, whether it's hosting Facebook ads, anything like that, it's important to experiment. It's important not to worry about kind of doing something that might end up being a failure. So if you use certain words, you get out there and try them, and if they don't work, then the next time you try something else. And so that's the #1 piece of advice I have when it comes to using these power words or any power words in your marketing. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Ali, who's going to talk a little bit about strong words that you can use in your marketing. So Ali, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. All right, I'm Ali. What I want to first talk about is when you're thinking about strong words, you're thinking about words that mean something. They're concrete. They conjure up a concrete image or an action. And to write or speak effectively with power words, there are kind of 2 portions of that. One is, again, using strong words. Like I can say, oh, Jose, you look good. Or I can say, Jose, you look magnificent. Magnificent is a strong word. And that's not to say, just grab your thesaurus and start, just randomly plopping in the biggest synonyms you can find. You need to have some kind of grasp of what you're saying.
Looks like we might be having some issues with people connecting. Let me double check.
Uh-oh.
Hold on a second. All right, well, KP, kick it off.
Are we?
Yeah, we're gonna run through again. Let's do that.
So hello everyone. I hope that you've all been able to connect by now. I'm sorry we got a little bit late of a start. So I just want to say welcome and thank you for signing up for today's webinar on power words that drive conversion. So the secret behind each savvy business owner, copywriter, or designer is that they know how large of an impact language has on emotions and persuading action. So there are certain words and phrases that are proven time and time again to boost response and conversion rates across the board. So in this webinar, we're going to help you teach you which power words are the most useful in certain situations and how to use those best for your own business. So we encourage you to take notes and ask questions throughout the webinar. My name is Kristen Paul. I am the client and media strategist here at Potrats. We also have Jose Romero. He is our marketing and communications manager. We have Ali Shivka. She is our senior graphic designer. And then we have Ali Misik. She is our marketing and communications specialist.
Okay, I'm gonna get started now. So a lot of you might have seen our Power Words That Drive Conversion PDF download. If not, it should be linked in the description bar below on the YouTube video. If not, we're going to send out an email afterwards. So if you haven't checked it out yet, feel free to check it out either down below or when we send it around later. Basically, we came up with 100 power words. We divided those into 5 categories. So the 5 categories were urgency, aesthetics, excitement, authority, and exclusivity. So again, those are kind of things that can traverse a bunch of different marketing techniques, some more so than others. Some are more applicable in certain situations. But we kind of thought that those were 5 categories that could pretty much sum up a lot of the stuff that you would probably be trying to convey in your email marketing. So yeah, so we gave you those 100 words, and I do want to stress that these are a starting point when it comes to using power words in your email marketing strategies. Sorry, these are a starting point. We just kind of wanted to start inspiring you and get the inspiration flowing, and then after that, we're going to give you the strategies, and then it's up to you to kind of see how these different strategies could work for your market, for what you're trying to sell, for your business in particular, and then you can kind of go from there. So again, I do want to stress that the one piece of advice I have when it comes to this is to just not be afraid to try new things. Again, we're giving you a starting point. After that, it's up to you to be creative and have fun with it, honestly. It's just, you're going to need to A/B test stuff. You're going to need to see what works and what doesn't work. And don't be afraid of failure, because that just means that you know that what doesn't work and you can work to make it better the next time. So going forward, as we're telling you, giving you these tips and giving you these strategies, just think about how you might be able to use it and think about getting out there and not being afraid to try these new things. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ali Shivka, who is going to talk about how to use strong words in your content.
Hi, I'm Ali Shivka. When I say strong words, I mean words that conjure up a real concrete image or feeling or action. I can just say, Jose, you look good. I mean, does that really mean anything? Or I can say, Jose, you're magnificent. Like, I'm conjuring up the image of a lion. And that's not to say, like, oh, the key to great copy, great pitches is to grab a thesaurus and sprinkle in words willy-nilly. You're going to have to go back to whatever you learned in English class. Hopefully you had a great teacher, and learn like how to really craft what you're doing. And also, because we're in advertising, and advertising is all about, like, let's get to people right away, let's grab their attention because they're on their way to the next thing real quick. You have to make sure that you're getting rid of all the words that don't really have a place. That includes if you can say something with one word instead of 3 words, use the one word. Like, this comes up more in using qualifying words like just and that, and having passive sentence structure, like kind of nerdy, grammar-y stuff. Like, I could say, Allie will be speaking, or I can say, Allie is speaking. Just little tricks like that, going through, making sure you're getting rid of wimpy words, getting rid of anything that doesn't need to be there, that kind of takes away from the power of your power words.
It's kind of the opposite of what you kind of do in high school when you're writing essays. If you're trying to meet a word count, I think it's like, you know, if you're trying to hit that 500 words, you might be throwing in words to make it as long as possible, but you're still saying something else. But I feel like with marketing, again, like Ali said, you only have a short period of time to connect with someone, so it's more about cutting out those words and just, yeah.
Oh yeah, and your medium also determines it too. With an email, you might have a little more room to have like a paragraph. With a billboard, you better say what you're going to say quick, and you better say it fast, because I'm driving past that billboard at 55 miles per hour.
Yeah, and a lot of these strategies you can start implementing right now. For instance, a lot of what Ali's saying about just using wimpy words, you might have some wimpy words on your website currently that you need to eliminate. They're stopping you from getting conversion. They're stopping you from getting the right results that you're looking for. So basically, if you comb through your website right now and look at every landing page on your website, you're bound to find something that, you know, may have been rushed, or you may have just dropped on your website because you needed to at the moment. but you want to look at your website and comb through it. Make sure you remove these wimpy or weak words. Replace things like possible with known, and just change those wimpy words into ones that you feel sound like they carry more authority. So basically, if you look at the Power Words doc that we sent you, there's a specific section in there for commanding authority. So use some of those words in there to remove those wimpy words. There's a good number of words you can replace just by using that. So you want to go through your website and read through everything, make sure it sounds good, and make sure it cannot be misinterpreted. Read it, and if it sounds like the message might not come across as you like it, then please review it and replace it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, to that point, Jose, another really great idea for that is to pull someone else in that's not necessarily looking at your website all the time like you are, and asking their opinion and asking what emotions that those words and your marketing invokes in them. Because if it's not doing something, if it's not evoking an emotion, then it's not doing its job.
Exactly, and you want to always make sure that you're invoking some sort of emotion, whether it be urgency or exclusivity or something, just getting people to feel as though your messages that you're sending are meant for an action, a desired action. So basically, whenever you create a website landing page, what you want to do is start with a goal or start with a plan. You want to just make sure you've laid out what you want on that web page, because at the end of the day, there's going to be a call to action, and you want that person to take that action. And if they don't, then your landing page is ineffective. So make sure you come in with a clear strategy and make sure you've outlined exactly what you want the person who's on that page to achieve by the end of it. So always do that. Always start with the end in mind, and always start with a plan, because that's how you build effective landing pages. And as Kristen said, if you feel as though you might have a weak landing page from the start, pass it along to someone, get their advice, and find out what pieces are missing. And that's the best way to do it. And if you want to just make sure that your landing page is perfect, always make sure you have someone looking at it as well.
I think combining what both of you are saying, actually, a good, more specific strategy that you could use is, like Kristen was saying, pull someone else in, and maybe, like Jose was saying, every page should have a goal. So maybe pull someone in, have them read over your landing page and say, okay, what's the goal of this? And if they can't pick out what the exact goal or what the exact call to action that you're trying to convey is, then maybe that's a sign that it needs to be reworked. So I think that's something that you can just try to implement now. Just pull someone in and say, hey, tell me what the goal of this is. And if not, then you can work on restructuring it.
The best writing that you'll ever do is probably always going to be rewriting. Most first drafts, they're okay. But once you have some distance for it, or you have someone kind of helping you along, you'll be able to see it with fresh eyes. So if I can stress one thing, it's always pull in that second party, or become the second party by putting away whatever you're working on and just coming back to it in an hour, in a day, just so you can actually look at it objectively.
Right. I know for me, something I see is I'll get set in my ways and I'll use the same words over and over again. If one word works well in one situation, I'll be like, oh, that's a great word, and it'll stick in my mind. And then I'll read through something and see that I used that word 10 times. And by the 10th time, it's obviously not as effective as it was the first time. So I think, yeah, that's something that I try to think about, and that's why, again, it can help to pull other people in so they can be like, you used that word about 15 times, and it doesn't make any sense. So
yeah, a main problem that I usually have when I'm talking to people is I'll say I think or possibly, and those types of words will just completely destroy the message that you're trying to convey. So if someone approaches you and says, hey, I'm not sure if I understood what you were saying, just think about how you phrased your statement. I say I think occasionally, and that will cause my message to come off as weaker, possibly not as effective as I am supposed to be.
And you just said possibly.
Exactly. So thank you for pointing that out. That's why you're here, Allie.
That's opinion.
Yeah.
One of my favorite books that I've ever read about writing is called On Writing by Stephen King.
Yes.
And it's sort of half memoir, half writing advice. And he talks about killing your darlings, which means there might be something that you're very attached to in what you're working on, and you don't want to get rid of it because you love it, but if you want what you're working on to succeed, you got to kill it. You got to be okay with removing and just cutting away. I am usually the one just cutting stuff away from copy that goes through, and it is kind of cathartic too. It's nice to just...
It's funny that you mentioned cutting away, because our team, we have a number of people who edit the copy and the content that we use in our strategies on DLD websites. When we're building landing pages, we have a team of anywhere from 5 to 10 people looking at a page that we want to launch. So basically, you'll start with one page with a set of content, and by the end of that process, where you have that 10th person look at that piece of content, it may not be the same page that you started with in the beginning. We have 10 people looking at it, just observing it with a magnifying glass and making sure that everything on there is going to be effective. And that's what you need. So if you currently have a team that's looking at your content, you want to make sure that you have enough people and enough eyes on what you're working on to make sure that it's effective. So what we do with DLD websites is we launch landing pages on a regular basis. When someone buys DLD websites platform, what they get is 52 pages of content to start with. And that 52 pages comes with anything from 7 secret tips to increase the value of your vehicle to should I buy or lease my vehicle. And we use power words throughout. We use words that get across urgency, that send a message of authority, excitement, things like that. Because you want those things in your resources, because they're free resources that you're giving to people, but at the end of the day, you want them to take a certain action. So by including stronger words in there, you're actually sending a message. And whether or not it's a sales pitch in that piece of content, it's something valuable that your customer has that they can take something away from. So by the end of that content, what you want to do is make sure that they have a key takeaway, whether that be come in to schedule your service, or come in to buy a new car, or trade in your current vehicle. You want to make sure that the words that you've used, that you've chosen, are going to drive that effective message. So basically what I'm saying is make sure you have a team in place to do so. If you don't already know of like how to do this, or these power words are a little confusing to you, we send along a document, and the document, you can read through it. There are over 40 power words in there that you can look at, and basically what those are is something you can implement in your content right now. If you have issues doing that, we can help. DLD websites are experts at creating content, and we edit the content ourselves. We have a team just dedicated to that. So what we do is we build that for you. If you're interested in signing up with DLD websites, contact us today. Our numbers should be located right under the video, or you can schedule your demo right on dldwebsites.com.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so we have a couple more editing tips from Allie, but before that, we have a couple questions. We're gonna also have time for questions at the end, so you guys can keep thinking of your questions. But we have a question from Joanne, who wants to know, what's a basic rule for word count? Is it still Twitter, like the Twitter word count of 140 characters, or has that increased? Kristen, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so as far as a rule of thumb for word count, it really depends on the medium in which you're advertising. So for example, it's going to differ drastically if you're looking at, a text ad or versus a web panel. Obviously, text ads and AdWords and Google have those specific rules of word counts you need to be in. Whereas if you're looking at designing a web panel and just having a strong call to action there, we normally try to make those as concise and short as possible. So there's not necessarily a set rule of thumb, but you want to make sure that they're concise and to the point. These can be, a little bit longer generally if you're talking about a landing page. So the title of a landing page might be a little bit longer than your call to action on a web panel, for example. If you're talking about buttons on your website, those are obviously going to be a bit shorter than you would put on a web panel or a landing page. So there's not really any set rule for that. Just as long as, like I said, you make it as concise as possible. You want to make it just to the point and make sure that your call to action is very direct.
Thank you. We have another question, but that kind of leads really nicely into what I'm going to talk about next. So, Allie, do you want to share any last thoughts on editing and fixing your current content?
Once you've written and edited your content for effectiveness, is that a word? Effectiveness?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. And power. You also want to make sure it sounds right. If you read it aloud and it doesn't sound like how a human talks, or if the sentence structure is weird, also look out for that. Sometimes we get caught up in edits and we end up with 3 run-on sentences or 4 sentences in one, so just double check for that. A lot of these tips can be applied to speaking. It's a lot harder to apply them to speaking, as you noticed a few seconds ago where I asked you all if there is a word that was a word. We have a Toastmasters group at our company. It's been great for identifying our crutch words, which are things like or as far as, or word, or that's awesome. Like, we don't even notice until someone says, hey, you use that word a lot. And if you don't have access to a local Toastmasters group, just practice with your colleagues. Say, hey, I want to practice this pitch. I'm going to pitch to you. Tell me if anything sounds awkward. Tell me if I'm using a word too many times.
Okay.
And come join our Toastmasters group if you're in Schenectady.
If you're in, yes. Okay. Thank you, Allie.
Most of us at PoTrats and DLD websites are involved in Toastmasters, and we've seen a number of people go from completely being uncomfortable in front of people to being able to talk in front of large crowds, and they've actually gone on to speak at events and things of that nature. So practice makes perfect. Practicing your craft is always the way to go. And Toastmasters is a great way to get involved as well.
Yeah, I think just any environment where you can be talking to even a couple people, just practicing, it's more than maybe you were doing before, so I think anything like that can be helpful. Okay, we had another question that leads nicely into what I was going to talk about next. James, I believe, asks, how does this impact subject lines or headers for content? So we're going to move into a couple different specific areas of where you can implement content merge like these. We have stuff like email subject lines, stuff with talking maybe one-on-one with clients, using it for your websites, using it for content on your websites. So first I'll talk about email subject lines because I do a lot of email marketing here, and subject lines are they're a really important thing to think about that you might not think of as a really important thing to think about, because it's essentially the first thing that someone's going to see when they're interacting with your email content, and it's going to be essentially the only thing that helps them decide whether or not they should even open the email. I know I am guilty of just kind of going through and deleting a lot of emails from different companies and stuff like that, clothing brands, everything like that. So if you have an engaging subject line, it can really make the difference between opening an email and just deleting an email. So going back to the Power Words PDF that we talked about earlier, a couple different categories that we talked about there I think are really important, and I find myself using a lot when it comes to subject lines. Urgency, first of all. I know we do a lot of sales events for our clients that will maybe only last a couple of days, so it's really important to get the word out there and, again, let people know, okay, this is probably the last time we're going to be emailing you about this. The sale's going to end tomorrow. You really need to come in today. So if you create urgency in the subject line, it'll make people open your email and say, oh, hey, maybe that is something I should check out in the next 24 hours. So words like immediately, expires, those are words that can instill that kind of urgency. Excitement is another good one. I think, people get a lot of emails in a day, so if people are really excited about what you're putting out, I think it can only benefit you. Especially with email subject lines, because you don't really have the luxury of using things like exclamation points, of using all caps, because that increases the spam ratings a lot. You can't really use colors and images and stuff like that. So it's really important. The maybe 6 or 7 words you have in your subject line really need to get that excitement out there. So again, that's when it really, power words, using those power words really helps you with that. Again, I think that's an area where we have an excitement category. on our PDF document that you can check out, but that's someplace where you really have the luxury to be creative and see what is exciting about your product or about your brand that you can instill into that. Just as a start, words like opportunity, ultimate, like this is the ultimate whatever you're trying to promote. But again, that's something you can be creative and you can have fun with, and you can test out things and see what works and what doesn't. And then the last category I want to talk about is exclusivity, because I think it's also important when you're interacting with people in email. An email can be a very personal place to interact. It's important to make people feel special. It's important to make them feel like, hey, we didn't just send this to everyone in our database. Like, you know, we want you to come to our store. We want you to come to our event, whatever you're trying to promote. So I think words like secret or off the record, again, you can be creative. We have some suggestions for you in our PDF. But yeah, email marketing and subject lines in particular are places where you can have a lot of fun. We've tried, I know, between us and our graphic design team, who helps us out with all our graphics-based emails, we have a lot of fun just testing out different subject lines. And again, maybe A/B test it. Maybe try one subject line for a group of people, like a more daring one for half of your audience, and then maybe one that you know gets engagement for the other half of your audience. But again, just don't be afraid to try things that you're not used to and see what works, because you might be surprised and you might end up with some new strategies. So yeah, also I think it's important to note that yes, this works for subject lines, but also think about it in terms of other things that you only have a very small amount of space, because again, 6 to 8 words is probably, 8 words is probably a lot. I want to say around 5 or 6 words for subject lines, but again, if you think about stuff like headlines on landing pages, Facebook ads, Twitter, those are places where you have a very limited amount of space and characters. So again, I talked about email subject lines in particular, but you can use these strategies for anything where you really want to get that message out in just a couple of words. So yeah, so moving on to something that maybe you have a little more space to play with, more words in. Kristen, do you want to talk about how you use this when you're interacting with clients?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways that I'll use PowerWords to interact with clients. Just because I interact with clients and prospective clients in kind of completely different ways. With clients, I have a relationship with them already. So if we came up with a really exciting new strategy, for example, and I want to send that strategy idea to a client, and then I wanted to send it to a prospective client as well, just an idea, I might write 2 completely different emails. A client, for example, I already have that relationship with them. So I might evoke more of an exciting emotion in them just to get them excited, to get the ball rolling. Whereas to a prospective client in new business ventures, you might want to create more of an urgency with that, create more importance, and then create authority with yourself. So subject line, like Allie was just speaking about, is one of the first ways you want to do that. You want to catch their attention right away, but writing those, you would want to just take into consideration who the audience is that you're talking to, and your end goal, like we were talking about earlier. So I might, outline that strategy in 2 completely different ways for those prospective clients versus our current clients. That's just one example.
Awesome. Anybody? I know, Kristen, you're kind of the one of us that does the most client-facing, but does anyone else have anything to add to that? If not, we'll move on to the next section.
Let us talk to clients. It's for the best.
Just make stuff look pretty. No. Okay. Yeah, so another area where I think we mentioned, Jose, you mentioned this earlier, but DLD websites, kind of how we optimize these power words on our websites. Do you want to talk any more about that?
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the process that went into it. It's there was a huge, a huge movement at Potracs and DLD websites to be able to generate all this content. Our 2 teams worked together to be able to come up with the ideas and the strategies that we use every day. So basically, what we did was assemble a team of writers copywriters, editors, and people who are just generally good at this type of uh, landing page design and building. I'm sorry, I'm having a little feedback here. Sorry about that. But yeah, so we had a team assembled content, and basically what we did was we launched the site internally, and we combed through it. There were about 50 pages that each of us read, brought home, made edits, and brought it back. And some of the ways that we were able to optimize that content were by going to other websites, looking at what has worked for us in the past. If I sign up for something on Amazon and I see a word that was strong, that might be useful in that content, I was able to grab that, put it on my phone, list it. Same with everybody else on the team. So we then optimized that content and created 52 pages that are all conversion driven, all use power words, and are just great content to have on your website. I believe there was a question about the originality of the content. I don't know if you wanted to answer that, KP.
What was the question, Jose?
Someone wanted to know if it was all original content, the 52 pages.
Yeah, so upon signing on to a DLD website, we set you up with 52 pages of content upon inception. With this content, we do customize it to your dealership. So obviously the content is going to differ based on your specific location, based on your manufacturer, and all of those will play a role into those different landing pages. So it is going to be unique content in that sense, and Google will recognize that as unique content as well. And this is something that we can definitely chat more about and get into more depth if you want to just give us a call after this webinar or anytime that works for you.
Awesome. Kristen, while you're here with us, you are one of our client-facing members of our team, but you also are our media buyer. So do you want to talk a little bit about how this kind of stuff can work for TV and radio?
Yeah, so I know we talked a lot about throughout this webinar using power words and mostly text-based situations, so emails and your website and stuff like that, but it's also important if you're doing anything with traditional media to keep in mind. So for some of our clients, we only have 15-second TV spots, so it's really important for myself as well as our video team to ensure all of our scripts are to the point, concise, and using those power words to grab someone's attention. So that's really important. Another important thing to keep in mind when using power words is using those in voicemails as well. So with the new business end of my role here at POTRATS, I have to leave, a number of different voicemails to different people. It's going to create a completely different response if I just said, "Hi, this is Kristen from DLD, give me a call back." Or I could say, "Hey, this is Kristen from DLD. I had a really exciting idea that I wanted to talk to you about. Give me a call back." I think those are really going to create two different emotions, two different responses in someone. And it's really just simply about adding those power words when necessary, keeping it to the point still, but making that person excited or making them feel a sense of urgency.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, we have a couple questions we can go through. Actually, Allie, I know you had a couple more recommendations for other outside resources that people might be able to get inspiration from. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So a couple of books that I love that are just about writing, they do tend towards writing fiction, but I think that's okay because fiction is about grabbing the person and making them step into your world, and that's really what you want to do. Like I said, On Writing by Stephen King is a great book about writing. I really enjoyed Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. That's also a part memoir, part writing guide, and it's just about taking writing piece by piece, really getting to know your craft. And then a book that I really enjoyed in college was Creating Short Fiction by Damon Knight. And that's because it's short fiction. That's about like really getting to the heart of what you're talking about quickly and pulling the person in. And there's a lot of writing resources out there. Writer's Digest, they will try and upsell you at every point, but you do get great articles. There is a Tumblr called Clever Girl Helps where people just ask writing questions and they get great answers. Now, it doesn't have to be everybody on your team immerses themselves in being the best writer ever, but somebody on your team, whether it's in your team, in your business, or somebody at the team working for you, your agency, your firm, really needs to be able to take this language and use it effectively for you.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think there's an amount of passion too that comes with it. If you're passionate about kind of finding new ways to use language, then it makes it a lot easier and more fun, and it'll make it a lot more successful for your team. Allie, I also think you made a good point about fiction and just how don't necessarily count that out as a resource, because I think even not just reading writing guides, but also just reading fiction, reading nonfiction, reading memoirs, reading just advertisements that you see out in the open. I think just like drawing inspiration from other sources and seeing like, oh, that really caught my attention, maybe that's something I should do. So again, like, as far as resources go, I think resources are endless. We see some sort of advertising and content every day. So I think that's interesting to think about.
And it's amazing how many people do well without having great copy.
Yeah.
So think of how much better you'll be if you actually know what you're doing.
Exactly. Okay, we have a couple questions. I sound like I'm echoing. I'm not. Sorry about that. Okay, our first question comes from Christine. Where in your marketing strategy have you seen power words make the most impact? I can answer this one. I think, again, subject lines are really, I think, anything where you have concrete analytics. So I'm just going to talk about subject lines because that's what I know the most about. But if you have any sort of email marketing software where you can see how many people are interacting, say like, what percentage of people who you send your email to are opening your email or are clicking on your email, I think, again, that's an easy way to tell. And so I think that's one place where we've seen a lot of effectiveness is being able to say, okay, this email had a 50% open rate with this subject line. This email had a 20% open rate with this subject line. So what did we do in this email that we didn't do in the other one? Or if, depending on the market, certain subject lines might work in some situations and not work in others. So I think having those concrete analytics makes it really easy, or at least effective, to just go through and see, okay, this is what I can improve on. There's going to be times where you don't really have an answer and something might have just worked really well without a real explanation, but I think it really helps to have those analytics in front of you and be able to see what you could possibly improve upon. Okay, and our next question is from Andrew. How do I start using power words? Jose, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, obviously the simple answer would be to download the power words document that we provided, and you can start with that. There are plenty of power words you can use in there, but that's not the end-all be-all guide for power words. Basically, the best way to do this is to start analyzing the way that you do your marketing. So if you're on a call and you notice that a word that you use is getting a lot of more interaction or more engagement, write that word down, jot it down, and save it for later. So the next time you're on a call with a client or a customer, you can just hop on and just use that word and know that it's going to perform as effectively, if not better, as it did before. Also, when you're going through websites, always be mindful of the verbiage that you say. What type of emotion does it strike? Is it driving you to conversion? Is it adding to that landing page or that website, or is it taking away from it? Jot down the ones that you find to be the strongest, and then you can then start using that yourself. In emails, like Ali mentioned, if you want to start using power words in your subject lines, A/B test different subject lines and send the same message to 2 different people with 2 different subject lines, and then see how each one performs. And then based on what you've A/B tested, which words work more effectively. I know, Ali, when you were editing a lot of the copy and the content that we were creating for DLD websites, A lot of what you were doing was A/B testing as well on the landing pages, on those content pages, reading through it and determining what types of conversion we were getting from it. And then after that, changing calls to actions to be stronger, to work better, and to get more effective results. So basically, if you want to start using power words, the best way to do that is to start analyzing what you're currently doing and then implementing some of these power words that we've given you and analyzing the words that you've seen work well in the past.
And I think Jose brought up a good point, which is we started with a base and then we went in and we strengthened it. There is a lot to be gathered from starting with one thing and saying, all right, we're just going to change the call to action to something we think might be a little stronger. Does that help? Just keep testing, keep seeing what works. And you know, what works in New York State might not work in Alabama. What works in Canada might not work in the US. There are so many factors. So every time you go in and change things, you're going to learn something new that someone else might not have discovered.
Yeah, that's why I think from a marketing perspective, knowing your market is one of the most important things to start with, knowing the people that you're trying to address. And like Jose mentioned, knowing your goal. I think that's what's really going to help you get a good grasp on what you should be doing in your content. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. This is a good one to end on, actually. We've been talking about, use power words. Kyle wants to know, can you overuse power words? Kristen, do you want to talk about this?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. So with power words, you want to make sure that you're thoughtfully crafting everything that you're using a power word in. And you want to make sure, again, you're not overusing those. Because what happens when you overuse those power words is you're just throwing a bunch of big words at people, and they're going to lose all of their power. It's not going to evoke any emotion because they just get jumbled and confused and start working against each other. So you really want to, like I said, thoughtfully craft anything that you're putting a power word in, and really anything that you're going to be writing or saying or talking to clients, anything about with your current business. So, for example, if we were running a sale and we wanted to send out an email blast, I wouldn't say, you need to immediately come into Bill Penny Toyota today. This is the final time to get your discount. Hurry in now. What? No. You got to just make sure you thoughtfully craft it, like I said. Be concise, to the point. Don't overuse them, because then you're just going to completely lose that power.
If everything is the hero, nothing's the hero.
I love
great
that.
power comes great responsibility.
I think it's kind of like, again, the joke in high school where people go through and write an essay and then go back and highlight each word and go to the little thesaurus tool and just replace each word with like a word that's over 10 letters long that no one will understand. Like, yeah, those are probably great words, but when you use 12 of them in one sentence, no one's going to know what the heck you're talking about. So, again, like Kristen said, choose your words carefully. Just craft your responses, and simplicity can be key. Again, it's about seeing what works and what people will respond to.
Kill your darlings.
Kill your darlings. Okay, well, if we don't have any more questions, I think that pretty much wraps it up.
Mm-hmm.
Jose, do you have any final words?
I'll just make sure, if you haven't already, download the Power Words document. The link should be below the video. If you're not able to access the link and you're not able to access the download, please let us know. We'll be emailing it out after this webinar as well, so you have that as a reference. And also, don't hesitate to call us. Our phone number is right on there. It should be right below the video as well. So if you want to give us a call and ask any questions, go right ahead. And we thank you for being here.
Yeah, and something else to add too is, if you're watching this, you didn't get to make it to the live recording right now, but if you're watching this after the fact, like Jose said, we're always here. Call us, let us know. We're here to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, again, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you on our next webinar.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.